Good morning. This is Lisa Cobb, and this is day one of our series of 6 mindful parenting classes. So, welcome. If you feel comfortable having a notepad to take notes, you certainly can, but my plan is to give you a copy of the PowerPoint so you don't have to take notes, but certainly do what is most comfortable for you. I am going to try to make this PowerPoint about a half an hour because I think that's about the amount of time that we parents who are staying at home um, might get a little bit of quiet time to just participate in this parenting class. So today to do is we'll just do a little bit of a warm up to get our brains thinking about why we have elected to participate in this series of mindful parenting. And then I'll do some definitions and some background about what mindfulness is, talk about how we can personally practice it. But really, I want this to be a time that can feel fun and something that you look forward to because certainly our days are stressful right now with the COVID virus and being at home and our lives being entirely different than they were a month ago. When we talk about mindfulness, I would like you just to take a second and think about what's one word that you would use to describe how you feel when you wake up in the morning. When you first wake up in the morning, how are you feeling? And this will be a question that maybe we will get an opportunity to discuss when we do our Zoom gathering. And then the second question is a word that you would use to describe how you feel when you go to bed at night. And just kind of noticing, are the feelings the same or different? Different every day, every moment. There's no right or wrong, okay? Just how do you feel when you get up in the morning, and a word you would use to describe yourself, and then how you feel when you go to bed at night, and what word you would use to describe yourself. One of the things that we're going to do when we do our Zoom meeting is something that we started a few years back in the educational setting, but really trying to work on noticing where our mind is at when we are trying our very best to take time to be present, whether it's in a meeting or a class, uh, with your family, making your dinner, whatever it is. What is it that you're thinking about? And what is it that's keeping you from being present right now? And maybe that's something that we'll share in our group too. Okay. When we have our group Zooms, my plan is we will meet uh, and have a little bit of a format that I will follow, but that it's a chance to kind of share um, some of the thoughts and feelings that we have, and certainly questions that we have about practice. Okay, so what is it that keeps us from being in the present moment in that given situation? Okay, so we're going to be talking about stress, and stress, as Dan Siegel defines it, is internal or external conditions that push the state of an individual away from equilibrium or balance. Now, a couple of months ago, we had talked about starting a mindful parenting class, and that was pre-COVID-19. And certainly, we all had enough stress with our families and our work, financial stresses, whatever they were, that kind of kept us from not always feeling grounded and in the moment. And certainly COVID has added immense stress to our life situations. Even if we're blessed to be at home with our families and our basic needs met, the idea of just change is enough to throw us off of our equilibrium. Okay. So stress, everybody has it. We have emotional, family, social, change, chemical, work, decision, phobic, physical, disease, pain, environmental stressors. And then certainly now the stress of being home and not having the freedom to go where we want to go, and even maybe losing some of the self-care techniques that we used in the past. Okay, so stress is normal. We all have it. The definition of mindfulness, one of the definitions, but John Kabat-Zinn, who is the founder of mindfulness-based stress reduction, and I would say, in my mind, kind of the grandfather of terming the practice as mindfulness, is paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, without judgment. So we could spend a half an hour just breaking down that slide, but mindfulness is paying attention in a particular way, meaning that we are making a conscious decision to increase our awareness in that present moment. Okay, so we're doing it on purpose. We're doing it based on what's happening right now, and we're doing that without judging ourselves or others. And all of those things, being present on purpose without judgment, are ways that we become increasingly self-aware of where our mind is. Are we thinking about something that happened in the past? Are we projecting out into the future? Or are we in the present moment? Because most times we are not truly just in the present moment. Our brain is set up so that we are always thinking about what we did and what we're going to be doing. Okay, so mindfulness is learning how to be totally present in the moment without judging ourselves or others. So you're noticing all of the thoughts and feelings that you're having, but being much gentler to yourself and others. When we practice mindfulness, which it is a practice, okay, we practice, it's not like one more thing to put on our to-do list, but it slowly starts to become a way of being. And it's interesting to me that so much of mindfulness focuses on our breathing when COVID-19 is actually taking away our breath or our ability to breathe with ease. Okay, so it's interesting to me because as we're talking about practicing mindfulness, it's really being in tune to our body. Okay, so when we own our breath, nobody can really steal our peace. Okay, and I like this saying, I finally figured out the only reason to be alive is to enjoy it. And all of the day-to-day struggles and the day-to-day beauty and the day-to-day lessons that we seem to be experiencing throughout our lifetime, really when we start to truly believe that when we can take our deep breath, it slows our body, it slows our mind, and allows us to feel more at peace and to make decisions with more clarity. When we make choices mindfully, we realize that we can change the situation, perhaps. We can change our perception of the situation, or we can just accept the situation. And it's not necessarily that one is better than the other, but you start to become aware, can I truly change this situation? How can I change my perception of this situation? And how can I accept this situation, or what parts of it can I accept and be at peace with, knowing that I can't change it? And going back to that judgment piece, knowing that the situation is happening, and how do I not judge myself for being in that situation and judge other people? Okay. I've always liked the saying, holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. Holding on to our anger, holding on to our judgment about other people, perhaps even how people are or aren't handling the situation of COVID, how our families are operating, if we have a split family, if we have a lot of responsibility that's happening right now within our household, or not. When we hold on to anger or the things that we can't control, it is really like we think that we're going to hurt the other person in being angry about it, frustrated about it, but it truly only hurts us physically, mentally, and emotionally. So mindfulness is about starting to understand about the choices that we've made and where we are in our life. So a big part of mindfulness is understanding breathing, and this slide shows that what we like to call identifying our anchor. When we take a breath, we breathe in through our nose if we can. We notice the air coming into our nose. We breathe, and as we're taking in the air, we notice the air as it touches our throat. And then we fill our belly like a balloon and hold it, and then blow back out. And usually when we breathe in, I like to teach that we breathe in about for the count of 4. Hold it for about the count of 7. And then out for about the count of 8. Okay. And sometimes I use a singing bowl, but we don't always have a singing bowl or some type of prompt or a chime. Some of the meditation apps that you can put on your phone or your computer will have different sounds too. But this is basically just telling our brain and our body, oh, we're going to do some mindfulness. Okay, so we might do something like this, and breathing in, holding, and back out. And the reason that we call it an anchor is because we practice our mindful breathing when we're not upset. We practice our mindful breathing when we are kind of at baseline, so that when we do get upset, we are able to take that deep breath. And sometimes each of us individually, we find it easier to notice that breath coming in our nose. And sometimes we like to feel that breath in our throat. And sometimes we like to feel that breath in our belly. And that is called our anchor. So when we are frustrated or our kids are frustrated, then we can say to them, because we've practiced this with them, let's go to our anchor and take a deep breath. And they know what that means. And so as mindfully as we can parent them in that moment of agitation, they'll be like, no, I don't want to take a deep breath, Mom, you know? And when we're telling them, calm down, you need to calm down, you need to take a break, and we're elevated, then we're just kind of building that power struggle, okay? So if we practice together as a family, taking our mindful breath, and we realize, wow, it really does calm my body down, then when we say to our kids, honey, I need you to just take a mindful breath. When you're ready, just focus on your anchor. And let's do 3 deep breaths together, okay? Because our children are looking to us to help them regulate their emotions, okay? So sometimes if kids won't take a deep, mindful breath, I just sit with them and do it myself. And I say, okay, you don't have to do a breath right now. I'm going to do some mindful breathing, okay? The most important thing is what you are modeling for them. And please understand, I know we are not perfect at this, right? You know, I always laugh because my own 2 kids, I would say to them after years of working with kids that have elevated emotions and are yelling and screaming and making threats to me physically and emotionally, and I just was always able to remain calm. And they would say to me, Mrs. Cobb, you never raise your voice. And so I would come home and laugh with my own kids, because with my own kids, it's much easier for me to show my frustration. So this isn't about me teaching mindful parenting because I was born an expert at being a mindful parent. Certainly, I continue to learn how to be responsible for my own self, my own feelings, my own thoughts, how I regulate my emotions, and then how I can be present with my kids and anybody else. So practicing mindful breathing with your kids when everybody's calm and having it be something pleasurable and something that connects you makes it easier when they are elevated to go to our breathing, okay? When we do our mindful breaths, we do mindful bodies. So we like to sit facing forward, our back up straight, okay, being still, being as quiet as we can. Our body and our mind are relaxed, but we're still alert. We're still aware of our surroundings. And then letting our eyes close if we feel safe to do that. If people sometimes who have experienced trauma, they're not going to feel safe closing their eyes. So I just have them do a soft gaze at something. So just picking a spot and staring at that spot while they're doing their breathing, okay? So when we do our mindful breaths, as good as we can, we try to get our trunk to be straight. It can even be lying down. But when we're not hunched over, it's a lot easier to take that mindful breath, okay? So when I'm working with kids, I have them practice taking a deep breath when we're like hunched over, and then taking a deep breath when we're sitting up straight, and which way is easier to really feel that breath down in our belly, okay? So we're going to take that breath through our nose if we can, and some kids will say, or adults will feel like, no, I can't breathe through my nose. That's fine, breathe through your mouth, but we're taking a breath in, filling our belly like a balloon, and then filling our rib cage, and then our shoulders, holding it and letting go. And we also talk about it's okay to make noise when you're breathing in and you're breathing out, okay? Sometimes in one of the classes, maybe next week, we'll practice some of our different mindful breathing techniques. But kids will come up with all kinds of ideas for how they can take a deep breath. You know, they can do a crocodile breath. Okay, so it doesn't have to always be this formalized, but it's a way of opening up our lungs and belly and chest so that we can truly get a nice deep breath. Okay, so we in this 6-week course are going to do a lot of breathing. Okay, and that's one of the things that you can start doing right away is practicing taking those 3 deep breaths. Okay, even if you get a few seconds where you're alone without any demands on you. Sometimes it ends up being that parents say, I only have a couple of seconds that I get in the bathroom, or nobody comes around me when I'm folding laundry or doing dishes. So those are times that I can practice my mindful breathing. Okay. So taking a deep breath and blowing out before we respond to our child, our sibling, our family member, our coworker. Just taking a deep breath, checking in to how your body is feeling, what you're thinking. Oh, this person always does this, so I'm sure they're going to do this. Okay, this is how they've acted in the past, so I know this is how they're going to act in the future. Okay, we don't know that for sure, but we do know that in this present moment, I can take a deep breath. And we can even say to our kids, just a second, I'm just going to calm my mind and my body down before I give you an answer, because I want to answer from my heart. Okay, and I want to answer in a way that's kind. And right now, I'm feeling a little frustrated myself, and so they watch us and we model that for them. Okay, so there's all kinds of research that supports mindfulness practice and how it can decrease a lot of our behaviors that have kept us, I guess, from being peaceful and kind and generous, and increasing our ability to self-regulate our emotions and calm our body, which then increases our self-esteem, increases our ability to focus, increases the quality of our sleep, okay, and how our brain works. When adults or kids are feeling dysregulated, we're not connected to our brain, and so we really can't think to make a good decision. This is what I was talking about a few minutes ago, asking our body to be present and asking our mind, where are we? Am I in the past, present, or future? Sometimes when we lay in bed and we can't sleep, we're thinking about what's happening in the past, what might happen tomorrow. If somebody that we care about is struggling physically or emotionally, what's going to happen tomorrow, what's going to happen, what's going to happen, what's going to happen. And if we bring ourselves back to our present and to our body and do our breathing and scan our body and calming it down where we're feeling tension, we can relax enough to go back to sleep and again to make a good decision. Mindfulness is learning how our brain and our body work together, and practicing some of our very well-researched meditation and relaxation exercises. Okay. So we will be learning that in the next 6 weeks together. Okay. A big part of mindful parenting is our self-awareness. Who are we? How do we handle stress? Okay, so we have to know ourselves and not be judging ourselves, and work at trying to get ourselves calm and grounded before we can really teach this to our kids. But the good news is we can learn this together with our kids, and they almost love that the most when it's not something that we're telling them to do, but it's something that we're learning together. Okay. The Dune Path is a visualization that I like to give that reinforces our brain circuitry, our neural pathways, which say that we all have habits and ways that we've always done things. And so if you think of the circuitries in our brain as neural pathways, and if we have always parented this certain way, or we've always made decisions this certain way, when we are triggered or asked to make a decision, we 99% of the time are going to do what we've always done, even if it isn't beneficial to us. Okay, so if we look at the picture of this dune path, okay, that's the easiest way to get down to the water. But we can eventually create a new path, a new neural pathway down to the beach or down to our desired outcome. But if we have to walk through that grass, it's going to be a little pokey, and it's almost going to be easier to go back to doing what we've always done. But that's why mindfulness is defined as being on purpose. So you're looking at that picture and you're like, my parenting style, I want to change it up a little bit. This is the way that I've always done it. I'm going to move to the left or the right and create a new neural pathway. And every time that I'm standing right here and I can see the old pathway, I have to consciously say to myself, okay, today I'm going to respond differently. How am I going to do that? First, calming my body, and then how am I going to interact, respond to my child, okay, to my coworker, to my spouse, to my family member. So the beautiful thing about practicing mindfulness is that we can laugh at ourselves more, truly, like, oh, here I go again, doing what I've always done. We can be less critical of ourselves and others. We are kinder to ourselves and others, and we are certainly more sincere when we say to our child, to our spouse, to our family member, to our coworker, whatever it is, we are truly more sincere when we say, I'm sorry, I reacted in a way that I can't take back, but I certainly would like to do differently next time. Okay. And when we say that to our kids and truly mean it, we will see a shift in their behavior. Learning how to laugh at ourselves truly is like an instant vacation. If I'm being honest, I probably had, unfortunately, only maybe 3 true belly laughs in the last month, but when I had those belly laughs, they felt like somebody handed me $1 million. Okay. So finding ways to lighten up, to see the irony, to laugh at ourselves, to feel a little bit lighter about maybe the way we've always done things, instead of beating ourselves up, judging ourselves, and judging other people. As we become more and more aware, we call it present moment awareness, we become aware of what our breathing is when we are calm and when we are not calm, what feelings we're having. I'm angry, I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm scared, I'm frustrated. What physical sensations we're having in our body. I have a headache, my neck hurts, my shoulders are tight, I have a belly ache, my heart is rapidly beating, okay, my palms are sweaty, and what thoughts are going through my mind. And what I teach to kids and to adults is what's going on in our mind is like a movie. When we watch a movie, we feel all of the emotions of the characters and the story plot that's happening in the movies. We might get scared, we feel sad, but that movie is not really happening. Okay? So when we think about our own thoughts, our brain cannot tell that what we're thinking about isn't happening right in that moment. Okay? So when we're laying in bed or interacting with somebody else and we're telling ourselves the story about how the situation is going to go based on the past and projecting out into the future, or thinking about something that did happen and remembering all the details of that, and then maybe putting it off into the future and how that's going to go. Our brain cannot tell that that's not happening right then. So then our body responds like it's happening right then, okay? So thinking about something that happened or might happen, our body has all of the physical manifestations of that as if it's happening right then, okay? So we become aware, oh geez, let me check in and what's going on. Let me do some breaths. How does that feel? Can I get a deep breath into my belly? Is my chest really tight? What emotions are going on? What's physically happening? And what am I thinking about? Okay, right now I'm just going to think about my breath. Oh, my mind's going out over here. Oh, I'm just going to come back to my breath. What is that? I'm going to come back to my anchor breath. Feeling it in my nose, throat, belly, chest. Oh, I can't think about that. Oh, back to my breath. Okay. So we practice just coming back to our breathing, okay? And the more that we practice that, the more when we are in a stressful situation, we just go to taking that deep breath without other people even really noticing that we're doing that, okay? Take a deep breath, check in. How is my breath? What am I feeling? How's my body reacting to that? What are my thoughts? How do I calm myself down? Okay. So we will practice in the next 6 weeks doing what's called a body scan. So we'll practice how do we check in with ourselves from our head down to our toes. How do we notice kind of our gut feeling, and talk about how our gut and our brain are actually connected and talk to one another, okay? So we will practice body scans, and you will be able to experience how relaxing that is and how we start to notice where we might hold our stress. And then doing a body scan together with your child is a beautiful activity that even if they resist it initially, the more they practice it, it's like we become thirsty for that feeling of relaxation that mindfulness practice brings. We'll talk a lot about mindful being, which is practicing that stillness versus mindful doing, and how we can still be mindful and practice mindfulness when we have this large to-do list of meal prep and cleaning our kitchens and doing our chores and managing our bills and all of that stuff. So we'll do a lot of work in the next 6 weeks on mindful being and mindful doing. We'll work on noticing our thoughts, okay, what we're thinking, and learning how to name the thoughts that we're having. Oh, I'm planning. Oh, I'm worrying. Oh, I'm imagining that this might happen, okay? And we just start to increase our awareness of where our mind goes. So we'll do a lot of practice. In our mindful awareness, we're going to learn about ourselves, what our triggers are, how we can create a more positive meaning from the experiences that we're having, how we can apply our increased awareness to the future, and noticing, am I withholding judgment from myself and others? And this is a really hard human thing, and we'll talk about why we judge other people and how we think that that ultimately keeps us safe, okay? We're going to talk about the different parts of the brain in the next 6 weeks. Specifically, we'll talk about the amygdala, the hippocampus, and the prefrontal cortex. Okay, if you have kids who attend North Muskegon, perhaps they've already had these lessons in their class, and they would love to talk to you about them. But we will break down all of the functions of the amygdala, hippocampus, and prefrontal cortex, and talk about how all those parts of the brain impact our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. We will talk about the neuroscience and how our brain, its job is to keep us safe, to keep us alive, okay? And so how those regions in our brain interact with one another, and how our brain is like Teflon for positives. Anything that happens that's positive in our life, we're like, oh yeah, we just kind of forget about it. And then our brain is like Velcro for remembering all of the negative things that have happened in our life. We do that, and kids do that. And so we'll break that down a little bit too over the next 6 weeks. We'll talk a lot about different models of the brain. This one is one that talks about the prefrontal cortex being this part of our brain, and the amygdala and hippocampus being more inside. And when we flip our lid, our amygdala and hippocampus are no longer talking to the prefrontal cortex, which is the smart part of our brain, and so we flip our lid, okay? And when we're not communicating, we don't always make the best decisions, okay? So we'll go over a bunch of different techniques like this that help us communicate with our kids, but also helps us understand, oh, I'm about ready to flip my lid, and when I flip my lid, I'm not going to make a good parenting choice. So I'm going to go take a little time out myself, do some breathing, and I'll get back to you on what the decision is. Okay, so we'll practice. We'll learn about how when we have some sort of stimulus without a mindfulness practice, we just react. Okay, with mindfulness, we respond. And when we respond, we feel like, okay, I'm okay with the decision I made. Where a reaction, usually then we start woulda, coulda, shoulda in ourselves and feel like horrible parents, okay? So we'll talk a lot about reaction. Like I said, we'll talk about the neuroscience, how those neural pathways we can build new ones. We can teach an old dog new tricks. We can teach an old parent new ways of interacting with our kids. Okay, so we'll talk a lot about that in the next 6 weeks, and you're going to feel pretty confident in the basics of mindfulness and neuroscience. Okay, and it's going to be really important that you be okay with self-reflection. Really looking at how did I decide to react to that situation or respond? Is the way I reacted, did that have to do with the level of stress I was feeling right then? It helps us to make decisions that we are more proud of, I guess, and we beat ourselves up a little less, and we only place decisions that happen in the present moment. That's the place where we want to pause, because between the stimulus, what's happening, and our response, that's where our power is, and that's where our kids' power is. And when you teach them that nobody can take away that pause before they decide, and we decide how to respond to a situation, you gain more and more self-esteem and self-worth, because you feel like you are in charge of what you are going to say or do next. The power of the pause allows us to observe and respond. Okay, Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist and a Holocaust survivor, and basically that he had said between stimulus response there's a space, and in that space is the power to choose our response, and in that response lies our growth and our own personal freedom. We will talk a lot about the stress model of crisis. Don't worry about that today, but we'll talk about how we all have a baseline behavior, and all of our baseline behavior is different. And then we have something that triggers us, and then we can potentially escalate, and then we can potentially outburst, and different steps that we can take as parents and as co-humans to help bring people down to baseline and recovery, emotional recovery, without having to get to the crisis state. Okay, so we'll talk a lot about the stress model of crisis. We will talk about the conflict cycle, which is a stressful situation happening, the young person's feelings and thoughts and their behavior, and then our response to that. And the key to stopping this conflict cycle is in our adult response. So we will break that down in the next 6 weeks. So in our review today with mindfulness, we're going to be able to bring our awareness from our inside world to our outside world. We're going to understand the difference between what's happening out there and what's happening in here. We'll notice all of our senses. We'll become aware of our relationship between what's happening in here and what's happening out there. See how what's happening out there affects what's happening inside of us, and how our inner state affects how we interact in all of our relationships. Okay? And we will always practice mindfulness with heartfulness. And so at the end of any group that I do, we always put our hands on our heart and close our eyes and say to ourselves, repeat after me. So I will say it, and then you will repeat after me. Hand on your heart, breathing in. I wish for me to be happy, and send that to yourself. I wish for me to be happy. I wish for me to be healthy. I wish for me to be healthy. I wish for me to be safe. I wish for me to be safe. I wish for me to be peaceful. I wish for me to be peaceful. And I wish for me to have joy in my life. And breathe that into yourself, because you are an awesome human. And then we send it out to each other, and we send it out to our children, wherever we are. I do this, and kids will remind me if I forget. I wish for you to be happy. I wish for you to be happy. I wish for you to be healthy. I wish for you to be healthy. I wish for you to be safe. I wish for you to be safe. I wish for you to be peaceful. I wish for you to be peaceful. And I wish for you to have joy in your life. I wish for you to have joy in your life. And breathe that in from each other. And sometimes, as hokey as it sounds, mindfulness practice without heartfulness and understanding our interconnectedness with each other kind of weakens the practice. Okay. And I did add safe. Actually, the kids added safe a few years ago, so I'll have that in our next slide. So I want to thank you for your time. I wish for you to be healthy and happy and peaceful, and to have joy in your life. I know this video looked like it went almost an hour. We'll talk about the length of time. We'll talk about when we can meet. Right now we're shooting to meet on Zoom Wednesdays at noon, but depending on how many parents sign up and what their schedule is, certainly I'm home every day, so there's some flexibility with that too. So I wish for you the very best, and want nothing more than for us to build a positive community of parents and kids, and what you learn and what you teach your kids will spread that around the world. So be well, my friends, and we will continue on this journey for the next 5 weeks, and I'll see you on Wednesday. I'll send out an email to everybody, and like I said, figure out a collective time. Take care.